The forest was silent in the way that only comes after violence. Elena Voss stood at the edge of the broken road, her basket of herbs forgotten at her feet, staring at the wreckage of what had once been a royal convoy. Overturned carriages smoked in the moonlight. The metallic smell of blood hung heavy in the cold air. She had been walking home from the eastern villages, where she traded medicine for grain, when the sounds of battle had stopped her cold. Now the sounds were gone too, replaced by an eerie stillness that frightened her more than the fighting had. She was not a warrior, she was not even a respected healer in her own pack, just a quiet young woman with steady hands and a gift for herbs that no one had ever properly trained. But her feet moved forward anyway, drawn by a groan she heard from behind a splintered carriage wheel. There, half buried under broken wood, was a young man. His clothes were fine, clearly someone of importance, but his face was pale and slick with sweat, and blood soaked through a bandage already wrapped hastily around his ribs. His eyes were open, but they did not track her movement. They stared past her, unfocused, milky at the edges in a way that told her instantly he was blind. "Please," he rasped, "don't leave me here." Elena knelt beside him without hesitation. Two guards stumbled out from the trees, swords raised, ready to strike her down as a threat. But when they saw her hands already working, pressing cloth to his wound, checking his pulse with practiced fingers, they hesitated. "He needs more than pressure," Elena said, not looking up. "He's losing too much blood. I have something that can help, but it's rare. It might save him, but it means I need to touch him properly. I need you to trust me." The taller guard, gray at the temples, and clearly a man used to command, studied her face for a long moment. Then he lowered his sword. "Do what you must. If he dies, you die with him." She almost laughed at the absurdity of the threat, but there was no time. From her satchel, she withdrew a small vial of bloodroot elixir, one of the few things her grandmother had taught her to prepare before she passed. It was forbidden in most territories, considered too dangerous for common healers to carry, because it worked so fast and so completely that it could bind a life to whoever administered it, at least in the old traditions. She had never used it, she had never needed to, but she uncorked it now and pressed it to the young man's lips. "Swallow," she whispered. "It will hurt before it helps." He did, his whole body convulsing once, as the elixir worked through him, and then his breathing steadied. Color returned to his face, faint but present. Elena exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Who is he?" she asked the guard. The guard's eyes were wide with something between relief and fear. "That," he said slowly, "is Cale Ashworth, son of Alpha King Draven." Elena's stomach dropped. She had heard of the Ashworth pack, the most powerful in the region, ruled by a king known for his cold judgment and his iron control over every territory he touched. She had never expected to be kneeling in the dirt with the blood of his only son on her hands. They did not thank her properly. Instead, she was taken, not gently, back to the Ashworth stronghold, a fortress of dark stone perched on a cliff that overlooked the northern forests. She was given no explanation, only the command that she would remain until Cale's full recovery was certain, because the ancient laws of pack medicine bound healer to patient until the debt of survival was paid in full. She had saved his life. Now, by their law, she was tied to him until he was strong enough to stand on his own. Alpha King Draven received her in a hall that felt colder than the winter outside. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with silver threaded through his dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. He studied her, the way a man studies a stranger who has stumbled into something they should not have seen. "You saved my son," he said, his voice flat, giving nothing away. "I did what anyone would do," Elena answered, keeping her chin high, despite the tremor in her hands. "Not anyone," Draven said. "Most would have run." He turned before she could respond. "You will stay until he is well. My healers will assist you. You will not leave the grounds, and you will not speak of what you see here." It was not a request. She understood that immediately. And so she stayed. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Elena had known. She was given a small room near the healing wing, modest but far grander than anything in her own village. Each morning, she checked on Cale, and each morning, she found him a little stronger, a little more himself. He was sharp in a way she hadn't expected from a king's son, quick with dry humor despite his blindness, and utterly without the arrogance she had assumed would come with his birth. "You're quiet today," he said one afternoon, as she changed the dressing on his ribs. "Usually you hum while you work. Did I do something to offend you?" "You didn't do anything," Elena said, surprised he had noticed something so small. "I didn't realize I hummed." "You do. It's not unpleasant." He tilted his head toward her, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "It's strange. I can't see your face, but I feel like I know it anyway. The way you move, the way you breathe when you're concentrating." Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks, and was grateful, for once, that he could not see it. That's a strange thing to notice about someone. "When you lose one sense," Cale said quietly, "you learn to pay very close attention to everything else." Over the following days, their conversations deepened. He asked about her village, her grandmother who had taught her the old healing ways, the life she had left behind to wander the roads, delivering medicine to those who needed it. She asked, carefully, about his blindness, and he told her only that it had happened when he was a child, an accident he did not remember clearly. His voice always changed when he spoke of it, tightening in a way that told her there was more beneath the words than he was willing to share. It was on the 9th night that Elena first heard him say the name. She had stayed late, checking his fever after a difficult day, and had fallen asleep herself in the chair beside his bed, exhausted from weeks of vigilance. She woke to the sound of Cale's voice, low and distressed, tangled in a dream. "Mira," he whispered. "Mira, don't go. Please don't go." His hands reached out in his sleep, grasping at nothing, his brow furrowed in pain that had nothing to do with his wounds. Elena sat frozen, watching him, her heart aching at the sound of such raw longing in his voice. She did not know who Mira was. She only knew that whoever she had been, her absence had left a wound in Cale Ashworth, far deeper than the one on his ribs. The next morning, she asked one of the palace servants, carefully, casually, if they knew of anyone named Mira in the Ashworth household. The servant's face went pale, and she quickly excused herself without answering. When Elena asked another, the response was the same. No one would speak the name aloud. It was as if it had been erased from the fortress entirely, and yet everyone flinched when they heard it. Elena began to notice other things too. There were no portraits of Cale's mother anywhere in the stronghold, though servants occasionally referred to a Luna who had once ruled beside Draven. There were no records of Cale having any siblings, and yet the way certain elders looked at him, with pity layered beneath their respect, suggested there was a story no one dared tell. She found her answers slowly, piece by piece, through late-night conversations with an old healer named Brenna, one of the few in the stronghold willing to speak honestly once she trusted Elena's intentions. "There was a girl," Brenna admitted one evening, her voice barely above a whisper, as she checked Cale's healing wounds. Cale's twin sister, born the same night as him, but there was a prophecy, an old one, that said one child of the Ashworth bloodline would bring ruin to the pack. Draven could not risk it. He sent her away before either child was old enough to remember her, hidden with a family far from here, her name struck from every record. "And Cale's blindness?" Elena asked, though some part of her already feared the answer. Brenna's eyes filled with old sorrow. The night they came to take Mira, Cale tried to stop them. He was only a small child, but he fought, screaming for his sister. One of the enforcers struck him to silence him, a blow meant to frighten, not truly harm. But something in the strike damaged his sight permanently. Draven called it an accident, because he could not bear to call it what it truly was. And then he had the pack elders perform the old calming rituals on Cale's mind, so the boy would not remember the true horror of that night. But some things cannot be fully erased. They only sink beneath the surface. Elena felt sick with the weight of what she now understood. Cale did not know his sister's name, because someone had taken it from his memory, and yet some part of him, buried deep, still cried out for her every single night. She confronted Draven the next day, her hands shaking but her voice steady. "You cannot keep hiding this from him," she said. "It is killing him slowly, even if he doesn't know why." Draven's expression did not change, but something in his eyes flickered, old grief long buried beneath duty. "I did what I believed would keep them both alive," he said quietly. I have carried that choice every day since. You think I do not know what I took from my son? I told myself his blindness was mercy, that if he could not see the world clearly, he would never search for the truth I could not give him. That's not mercy, Elena said. That's fear, wearing mercy's face. The king said nothing, but for the first time since she had arrived, she saw something crack in his composure. It was Chaol himself who finally forced the truth into the open. He had overheard fragments of Elena and Brenna's conversations through the walls, enough pieces to demand answers from his father directly. What followed was not a gentle unraveling, but a storm. Years of buried grief and anger finally given voice. Chaol wept for a sister he could not remember, but had never stopped missing, for a childhood stolen from him twice, once by an enforcer's blow, and once by his own father's silence. Elena stayed beside him through all of it, not offering false comfort, only steady presence, her hand in his when the pain grew too heavy to bear alone. In the weeks that followed, something shifted in the Ashworth stronghold. Draven, faced with his son's fury and his own long guilt, agreed to search for Mira, wherever she had been hidden, whatever prophecy still lingered in old superstition. Chaol, for the first time, stood not as a fragile son to be protected from the truth, but as a man determined to reclaim the family that had been taken from him. And Elena, whose life debt had long since become something far deeper than obligation, remained by his side, not because ancient law demanded it, but because neither of them wished it any other way. Months later, on a quiet evening in early spring, Elena sat beside Chaol's bed once more, though this time there was no wound to tend, only the comfortable silence between two people who had grown to understand each other completely. She watched him drift into sleep, waiting, almost without meaning to, for the familiar sound of a name whispered into the dark. It never came. For the first time in 15 years, Chaol Ashworth slept through the night without whispering a name he could not remember, because the one beside him now, he never wanted to forget.